But I've got something I was going to ask you as well, which is kind of interesting because I've heard you refer to yourself as Madison and Maddie. And
Yeah.
I want to know, what does your boyfriend refer to you as?
Oh gosh. Um, Both. So I actually didn't get called Maddie until I was in college. I was
Hmm.
Madison growing up because my mom, told me my whole life, we named you Madison, and that's what people are going to call you. And if anybody
Right.
calls you Madison, it's disrespect. Or if anybody calls you Maddie, it's disrespect.
Right.
And so really, I didn't become Maddie until I got to college, and my sorority sisters called me Maddie at recruitment, and there were so many of them that I couldn't correct all of them, and it just kind of stuck, and it's so much easier. So he had called me Maddie. We were friends, long before we started dating, years before we started dating, and he called me Maddie, pretty much the whole time until he went home with me the first time, for me to say, this is who I'm dating, mom and dad. And he made he figured out that everybody in my home life calls me Madison. And he asked me in the car after we'd been friends
Uh-huh.
for almost 3 years. We'd been dating for a while at this point. And he was like, do you not like being called Maddie? Like, does that offend you? And I was like, no, no, no. But to him, it's usually whenever it's something serious that we're talking about, and he knows that like and he wants me to really pay attention and focus, he'll call me Madison because he knows it's a formal term for me, whereas Maddie is more informal. So it's kind of like whenever your mom says your middle name when you're in trouble. So like anytime like
Yeah.
I'm in trouble or we're having a good conversation, he'll call me Madison, just kind of like out of respect.
Okay. My impression is that Madison is your feminine name, and that Maddie is more masculine. Do you feel like, because in the conversation I hear you referring to yourself in both of those, and I was getting the impression that when you're more lit up, that you're calling yourself Madison. When you're when you're more in the masculine, that you're calling yourself Maddie.
Did you say Madison's more masculine?
I felt like Madison is more feminine, even though it sound the opposite, like the way that the name sounds the opposite of that. But just from your own, the way that you refer to yourself, and where you, like, how you, the look on your face.
So would
But
you be upset if a female that you took on a first date paid for it?
no, I'd be flattered, but I would still pay for it. I'd be flattered, right? What I would expect is I would say, wow, that's amazing that you want to pay for it. Don't worry about it though, and then I would pay for it. And then if she put up a little bit of resistance, again, I would take that as a compliment. I say, wow, like you're stellar, but I got this. Don't worry. You can buy ice cream, right?
So
That's what I would say.
you're not okay with it, is what you're saying. You wouldn't be okay with it.
No, I wouldn't be okay with it, just as myself, just not lying. Not, I would consider it to be a flattering thing for sure, right? I wouldn't be upset. I wouldn't be angry about it. It wouldn't be a deal breaker or anything like that, but I just wouldn't let it happen.
So then, do you think that plays into the men wanting to provide for women? Like, what's the difference in me paying and you paying?
Yeah, I mean, there's some degree to the providing, but really, it's the man should be asking the woman out, right? Because he's supposed to treat her in that way, in the sense that, to make her feel special, to make her feel beautiful, to make her feel an object of want, of desire, right? The man, like, I mean, you even had said, is that you said that it's a woman can need a man. A man should want or desire a woman, right? And I think that's where the difference comes from. It's like a man needs to feel useful. He needs to feel respected and useful. A woman needs to feel desired. I'm doing something. I'm taking her to dinner. I'm paying for this thing. I've done this work, and then to feel respected for that. Oh, you've taken care of me. You've done something for me, right? You're a useful person, right? I think that's where I would say that it comes from, and then also just from the aspect of, a man should really not make a big deal, right? I think a lot of guys today, they're like, oh, trying to split checks and looking at the bill and analyze it. It's like, look, if you're a guy that is of high value, a dinner, it doesn't matter how much the dinner costs. It's $150. Who cares? You have your card, you put it in there. You don't need to see what the bill is, because it's not a big deal to you, because it says a lot about you whether or not you treat people and you look at people and value their worth or not. If you say, oh, I'm not sure if you're worth a $100 dinner, that says like you're putting a dollar value on people. So that's where I see it in that way. So well, one thing that you said that's interesting because it kind of contradicted a little bit of what you said before, is because I was going to ask you, so because you said equal. So do you want to be equal? Because everything that you've said up to this point has said that you don't want to be equal in that. And when I say equal, I don't mean of equal value. I mean of being the same, because you had said with the dinner thing, I want to be equal.
Yes, I do want to be equal, but I think equal means that you and I, whatever we add up to equals 100. So whether you are 75% in providing and I'm 25%, we're equal. So to me, paying for the first date is, saying that I am able to provide. However, I don't expect you to provide for me all the time. So I want him to see, I don't want him to feel like he needs to provide for me constantly. There's a lot of, I dated a guy previously for a long while that used, dates and flowers and anything that he did for me, almost like a tally mark to a score. Everything he did that required some type of, monetization to it was a tally mark for him, as far as, anything I did that didn't require money, whether it was, cleaning his apartment or going to fill up his car with gas or whatever it may be, even though that takes money, it never equated to him as equal. So I don't know if that's making sense. Is that kind of?
It's making sense. I mean, what you said is not equal, right? If he's 75%, you're 25% provider. But I think what you're trying to say is that you have like an equal contribution in overall to the relationship. So if he's mostly providing from the monetary perspective, you're providing in a different way, from a nurturing perspective, taking care of your man, giving him a back rub, the classic, what I'm saying, like making him feel like a man, like building the relationship in that way. And he's being useful in the sense of being a utility, of being a strong man who provides, and me get bear and you cook. I don't know why we're cooking bears, but you cook it, right? Bringing home the bacon, I guess that's a better way of saying it. But yeah, so I see that for sure. I have to say though, I think a lot of what you're doing when you're paying for the date is that you're really, because one thing also I was going to ask you about is because, I mean, you're very outspoken, right? So that's going to turn off a lot of guys because it's aggressive, right? And then paying for the date on top of that, I feel like what you're doing is you're creating a very, very strong filter. It's like, can you handle it? Like, how much of a man are you? And you probably like to see the reaction for that. That's probably also why you're a serial dater, is because a lot of guys probably couldn't take that heat. It's going to take a really masculine man to be able to handle that, and then to be able to take the next step. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's how I'm seeing it.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. So in the pageant world, it is very taboo to have a boyfriend, and I think this is kind of where I've been in the pageant world for the last 4 years, so my dating ideas have kind of been molded and shifted a little bit. But in the pageant world, it is chock full of women that are powerful, that are outspoken, that are very well spoken. They articulate, and they're just incredible women.
I also asked about whether or not you think that these are good role models for women, right? As you're describing, is a pageant girl a good role model for women?
Oh, heck yeah.
Okay.
If I have a daughter one day, 100% would be okay with her looking up to Chesley Christ, looking up to Nia Franklin, Kiara Kazan, whoever it may be, a pageant woman, for many reasons. People think, when they think pageant, they think of a bimbo blonde that has no brain in her head. They think of girls that, in the terms of somebody that recently spoke about pageants in the media, girls that parade around in swimsuits and don't respect themselves. And for me, I kind of was in that same mindset before I competed. I thought pageant girls were girls that just wanted to be pretty. They wanted to wear their fake hair and walk on stage. And then I competed, and I almost passed out before swimsuit, because it is terrifying to put yourself out there like that. It is, I mean, you can't hide anything in a bikini, that is for sure. So whenever I walked out, there was that mind shift of, like, this is me. Like, this is the only person, the only body I've ever had. And it's very empowering. It's very, you know, satisfying to know that nobody else could bring to the table what I bring to the table. And I think it starts with the physical aspect, especially in the pageant world. Like, nobody can bring, you know, I'm 6 foot, and if I'm in my pageant heels, I'm 6'7". So nobody can bring 6'7" to the table. And then when it comes to interview, they ask you about your political beliefs. They ask you about your religion. They grill you in a conference style on everything. They're literally told to back you into a corner. And whenever I walk out of an interview, I usually feel like I just backed them in a corner, and that was great. Like, you know, I controlled that interview. And there's so many little life skills that you learn in pageantry, you know, how to control a room in a conversation, how to present yourself in, you know, in a skimpy bikini and still be respectable, how to, you know, present yourself in a gown and still be respectable. I think it's tough to, for me now, to look at pageant women and see anything other than capable, empowered, and intellect. All I see with, you know, the girls in the pageant world is just pure intellect.
Now, the first part of what you said sounded very masculine. Not necessarily bad, but masculine. I mean, it sounds like to succeed in that world. I mean, taking control of the interview, right? Very masculine. Not saying these things are bad, because we all have to be masculine and feminine. And
Right.
sometimes you need to, like, to succeed in the business world, it's a man's world. It really is. You have to be masculine in order to succeed there. Does it make it more difficult for a woman if she's the superhero, right? To put it into what we talked about earlier, right? Because it's you're almost describing a superhero, right? In that respect. And so will it make it more difficult? Just like you said, you had problems, you know, that you were kind of a serial dater, because, you know, probably a lot of the guys were not able to handle that and to bring you, because the more masculine the woman is, the more of a masculine man she needs in order to become feminine in his presence, in the presence of a very masculine man, because men tend to control the interaction, the dynamic. A woman is more of a reflection of the man she's with than the man himself, right? So if a man is very masculine, it's like two magnets, right? Magnetic induction, right? If I have a very, very strong magnet and I take the North Pole and I put it against a smaller, weaker magnet that has a North Pole, the North Pole and the weaker magnet will flip and it'll become a South Pole, and then they'll connect, right? That's how I view that. So from that aspect, I mean, all the things that you said are good for succeeding in the man's world and career and life and being strong and being that superhero. But from the aspect of dating, what do you say about that, right? If you are, you know, acquiring these attributes that it might not necessarily help you as far as attracting, or maybe is it that you just want to make sure that you're filtering out all of the men that are weak? I mean, there's not going to be a lot left, to be honest with you, which I'm sure you found, right? You know, what do you think about that?
I don't think a lot of girls can do that. I don't think a lot of them can turn it on and turn it off, because we are such a polarized, you know, nation in general, first of all, right now, but we are also just so polarized as females. You know, either you are the strong, independent woman that doesn't need anybody, or you are the female that, you know, asks everybody for help, that wants to know, wants to learn, wants to gain friends, wants to do everything in the world, wants to make all the connections. And I think people believe that they have to be one or the other, and that, you know, happy medium is just not realistic, when it is. We are, by nature, we can do both. So I think that, you know, you're going back to superheroes. I definitely think that it is harder for women to be a woman superhero, to be accepted by men, because men, you know, when they see women, they see nurture, they see this, you know, they see this soft presence. And I think it's hard for a lot of men's brains to flip to see this woman as saving the day. And a lot of that goes for powerful women. You know, take Chesley Chris, for example. She's Miss USA. She's also an attorney. She works for E! News. She is the lawyer for Miss America. I mean, her resume is probably 18 miles long, and she can't, you know, she's not dating anybody. And I think it's because a lot of men see that as intimidating, and they see her in the sense of being a professional and the hard attorney and whatever it may be, and, you know, kind of come to the conclusion that, well, that's who she is, and that's all there is to her. They kind of miss that there's depth there. So
well, and I would say as a man, I don't care about any of that stuff. I don't care about it doesn't matter. I don't want a superhero. I don't care about it. It's great. I mean, from a like a human being perspective, say, wow, well, you did a lot of things. It's great. I care about how she treats me. That's the only thing I care about. I don't care about your resume. I don't care about any accomplishments you had. I care about how do you act towards me as a man? How do you treat me? And that's the thing that I would judge on, not any of those things. And I think a lot of women actually have the idea that racking up all these accomplishments, you should do those things for yourself. But don't expect a man to appreciate them, because he's not, because that's not what he's looking for. He's looking for attractive. He's looking for a lot of times youth, and he's looking for femininity. And does she treat him like a king? Does she treat him like a man? Does she have respect for him? And I would guess, so this is something that I was curious, since after hearing you say that, is, so your current boyfriend, I'm assuming that, because I can see you steamrolling all these guys, running over them, right? And they're not being able to handle it. But then with your current boyfriend, I would assume, since you've been together for such a long time, he's kind of passed the test, right? He handled, right? He's enough of a he's that big magnet, right? That's able to, so has he induced you, like around him, are you very feminine? Do you treat him like the big, strong man, and in that way act very feminine towards him, even though to the rest of the world, maybe you're steamrolling guys, you're able to handle your own and turn the tables on the interviewers, right? To bring out that masculine side. Do you give him the feminine side? Does he bring that out in you? And do you treat him like a big, strong man?
So I didn't, until he called me out on it. I really had to be, put in my place a couple months after we started dating. And we essentially had a conversation about, like, you don't have to be on edge all the time. You just don't have to be on edge all the time. And it's okay if you let your walls down. And eventually I did. And after we started dating is when I was in the shooting at UNC Charlotte. And that was the day that, when something emotional and traumatic happens like that, you're kind of forced to let your walls down. You are forced to, lean into somebody and let somebody take care of you. And I could have very well let my friends do that. I lived in a sorority house of 28 girls. I could have done it. But, he was the one that showed up, and he consistently showed up over and over and over again. And I think that consistency is kind of what broke me down a little bit. And I know I did not make it easy for that poor boy, but I can say without a shadow of a doubt that now when I'm around him, I know that I am protected, and I know that I don't have to be the pageant girl. I don't have to be the swimsuit model. I don't have to be everything that I thought I had to be in my head. And it's hard to kind of grasp the idea that, for me at least, that, he fell in love with Maddie and not in love with the idea of Maddie. Because I think that happens all too often. People compare Instagram pictures side by side, and they're like, oh my gosh, y'all would be great together, and there's so much more to it than just the idea of dating somebody.
So as much as, I know that you love the pageant system, and you've been successful, and congratulations on all the success, and it, obviously has helped you grow as a person in many ways. But do you feel, to some degree then, based on what we talked about, that it's also been detrimental because it's made it harder for you to be feminine, right? Like, I mean, it took a long time for your current boyfriend to get through and to actually bring that side out where you can feel comfortable. And I think that's my biggest fear about the pageant system, because I love the idea of it, and I love the idea of actually becoming someone of value and figuring out what your worth is besides just being pretty, and actually thinking about topics and things like that, and developing an actual real value system and personality. But what I fear about the pageant system is that it's also in some way masculinizing women to the point where it's almost destructive in the sense that femininity that they're naturally born with, it's kind of teaching them to override that, and then it gives them a problem in a relationship because they need to really be that soft feminine woman in order to attract the kind of guy that they want. You're fortunate in the fact that you found a guy that was actually strong enough to and patient enough to overcome that and kind of bring that out of you. But I worry for a lot of women that aren't as strong as you, that aren't or aren't as, don't find that guy, that that pageant system maybe has made it harder for them, and not just the pageant system, but this is kind of an echo of what is happening in society today, right? I think we see the same thing happening where women are kind of being trained to be in a hierarchical system, right, instead of egalitarian, right? Women in general, like the feminine aspect is everyone, let's take care of everyone, everyone's equal, you're okay, I'm okay, we're, she's not better, we're not better, we're, whereas men are like, no, I'm the best, I'm competing with you, I'm the winner, you're not, right? And that's, it's that nature. But when women compete in that aspect, it's sort of, they have to become, and it's hard for them to drop it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of that. So what's interesting is in the Miss America system, there is actually a rule that says you introduce yourself as the title first and then your name. So I would say, hi, my name is Miss North Carolina, or hi, I'm Miss North Carolina, Madison Bryant, blah, blah, or whatever you do, you're always your title first, then your name. If you forget to say anything, you forget to say your name. And I think that, that kind of trains girls in a sense to, just for example, I was told one time in a meeting that every time you walk through a door at an appearance, they are expecting Miss North Carolina. They are not expecting Madison. They're expecting North Carolina. And their idea of Miss North Carolina is what you have to fit into that day. It doesn't matter if you got dumped the night before. It doesn't matter if you have food poisoning. It doesn't matter if a bee stung you on the arm before you walked in that door. They're expecting Miss North Carolina. And you are Miss North Carolina for the next couple hours. Or it just kind of puts this idea in girls' heads that you're going to love me first for being Miss North Carolina, for being a CRNA, for being whatever it may be. And then you're going to eventually one day love me. I don't know. So I think that's kind of, how it has affected pageant girls. And that's kind of how I see it working right now with a lot of my pageant friends. They're just, it's almost like whenever people want to get too personal with them, or if a guy tries to get too intimate, with how they're feeling about things or whatever, it's almost like they're like, well, why are you wanting to know that? Or,
oh, I see. Yeah.
Too much information. You're getting too close. And we kind of lose that, like you said, the femininity to it, the being vulnerable, the being able to nurture and be real about things. And so, I think that it has affected pageant girls. So then my counter to you would be that if, you could change anything about a pageant world to kind of, help bring back that femininity, bring back the nurturing, the calmer side of things, the more feminine side, what would you add to a pageant?
Yeah, that's interesting. I almost feel like the idea, it's going to be, it's like trying to put a fish out of water. It's like, the idea of competition is really a masculine thing. I don't know if you can have a competition and not have there be some masculine element to it. You just, maybe what it is what you're measured on. Maybe the way to change it would be to make really the biggest thing that you're measured on is your feminine presence, not necessarily, the bikini is kind of the sexuality, like how well do you look, right? And then how well spoken are you? And, again, I'm not super familiar with the pageant system, but I would say if the criteria is more of being feminine, right? Those, how do you nurture? How do you care? What kind of a person are you to the people around you? Then perhaps that would make a difference. But yeah, I don't really know enough about the pageant system to say. To me, it seems like anytime that you're going to be competing, that you're going to deal with a masculine element of it.
Yeah. So in terms of like a guy dating a strong masculine sensed girl, do you think that it is important for him to make it known to her that she does not have to be like that all the time? Or do you think that that's kind of something that she should, that she should assume to take down her walls without him having to ask her?
Yeah, that's a good, I think what he has to do, what he has to indicate, and I've been in this situation before, I refer to it as bristles. like your bristles aren't, I'm not attracted to your bristles, right? Like your bristles aren't necessary, like, or even just encouragement of just being like, oh, I really liked it when you put your arm around me like that. That was cute. That was, that was sweet. Like, or just saying I like how sweet you are. Like, I'm not sweet. I'm sassy. Like, yeah, I know that you're sweet. That you're sweet, and because that's showing, rather than me saying, I prefer if you act a little more feminine around me, right?
Right.
That's not a very masculine way to handle it. It's better to like men thrive on being kicked in the ass and like you fat, piece of shit, like get your act together, you're slow, hustle up, like being whipped. All right. And women thrive on encouragement, on being lifted up. And so I always tell guys, if you want to change a woman's behavior, you reward, you like, she does something that you like and you lift her up, you encourage her for it. You want to change a man's behavior, you tell him he's a lazy piece of shit and needs to get his fucking act together, right? And that's, that's how we respond differently. So I'd say though, but it is critical for the guy to indicate that, because he's kind of saying like, look, I get it, you're strong, I get it, but you can let your guard down around me, I got you, right? If he doesn't do that, he's not going to be happy and she's not going to be happy.
So do you think it's almost a slap in the face to a male whenever a girl doesn't let that guard down?
If there's yes and no. So if it goes on for too long, right? I think actually that a woman that presents kind of a stronger front initially, right? It's what back in the day used to call that playing hard to get, right? It's a good thing because it says, hey, I have respect, I have value for myself. I don't just give my heart to anyone. You have to actually be a man who's worthy of stealing my heart. But I will give it to you, right? There has to be that hope at the end of the rainbow of like, yeah, I can be soft with you. He has to be able to see that. I think if a guy can't see that there's a softness to a woman, at least a high value guy, he's not going to be attracted. But to open up, to earn that, I think is key. So I would say at first, right, you're not just giving your heart to anyone. I think that has some value.
What about flipping it to the female side? Do you think that a female should also earn, the right to a guy letting his walls down, or do you think that that's something that should just come naturally?
It really depends on how secure the guy is in. A lot of guys, in fact, I was just on one of my live streams today, and I was talking about that this idea of like the idea of seduction is kind of gone. Like guys don't know how to seduce women anymore because they're so afraid of being emotional and being weak. And it's like, no, it's great to be emotional, but to not have your emotions master you, right? To have mastery of your emotions, to actually be romantic. Like, where's the Don Juans? Where's the romancers, the womanizers of old who actually knew how to seduce women? So that's part of it. It's not just being like holding this really strong front as a man saying, I'm tough and nothing can, I'm quiet and cold. It's saying, look, you're a person who's of enough value that I'm going to open up to you. I'm going to tell you just how beautiful I think you are, but not because I want your approval or I'm trying to like earn you by complimenting you so that you'll like me more, but because you just took me so hard. I can't control myself. I have to tell you these things. I have to, and it's coming from a different place. It's coming from a place of that desire that women want to be desired, as opposed to a place of desperation, of need, of please like me back because I'm telling you how beautiful. I liked all of your pictures on Instagram, right? That's like a very like we call it today, thirsty, right? Like a very needy place versus, saying like having a girl that like being confident enough to say, I am going to share with you a piece of me that I don't share with everyone because you're a special person. And I don't need anything back. It doesn't matter. Like, I just need to open up to you, to be an open person. I think that's something that is required as well in order to really have like a fulfilling, meaningful relationship, because so many relationships today are happening at the surface level. And to really have that depth, to have that intimacy, it requires both sides to open up. It looks differently on both sides, but it's absolutely required.
So then how do you feel about this whole notion of chasing or wanting what you can't have? That, kind of like the stigma around guys, they always want what they can't have. There's plenty, I guess for me at least, and the girls that I'm around, we're always like, guys could have pretty much whatever they wanted. Girls are emotional creatures, which I guess you're saying is the complete opposite. You know, guys could, you know, all they have to do is be nice to a girl and treat her right and she'll fall in love with them. But they don't want me. They want the girl that, you know, is perfect on Instagram and has, you know, every guy chasing her. So what is that?
Well, there's two things I'd say about that. One is that everybody wants what they can't have. Women definitely want what they can't have, right? In fact, you want to attract a woman, make it so she can't have you, and it's more likely, right? I mean, we all know this is the game that we play. This is the you know, the situation of humankind. But I will say this, which is that, and this was something I was talking about in that talk about how to nab a top 5% man, is that a guy that is desired by women, that is in the top, you know, that has status, that is a top 5% man, he's had the 10s, he's had the hot girl on Instagram that every guy wants, and because he's had access to those women, his criteria is slightly different than a guy that's more in a desperate, thirsty, needy position. The guys that are in the bottom half, their only criteria for judging women is their beauty. That's it. Because they think that the hotter one is better, because they haven't had the hotter one, so they think the hotter one's better. But for a guy that's had the hotter one and had multiple hotter ones, he starts to say, well, you know what, that was nice, it was fun, but I'm looking for something a little bit more depth. Like, that wasn't quite as fulfilling as I thought it would be in my life. Like, I thought that, like, if I got the hottest girl, then that would be it. And then so his criteria is a little different. Then that's where, like I was saying, you know, it's a little bit different trying to attract a guy that has that high value, because he's going to look at women and he's going to say, well, you know, obviously I want a woman that I'm attracted to physically, that's beautiful, but the stronger criteria is going to be these other things, which is, that's where he's going to want a woman that's more feminine, that's more fun to be with, that's actually a value and add to his life, that's going to help him on his mission in life. And so he might choose a woman that in his mind, you know, using the scale, is, let's say, an 8 or 7.5 versus a 10, because he's had the 10 before. It's fine, it's fun, it's great. Other guys want her, but he knows that he'll be much more happy with this girl that's, you know, physically less attractive perhaps, but is more attractive in other ways, right? But again, this is only the top guys, because the bottom guys are always going to choose looks first. They're always going to want what they can't have. It's sort of like when you get what you can't have, then your world changes. The same thing happened just, you know, outside of dating relationships in my life, where I had always wanted to retire. I always wanted to, you know, retire young, and I had these goals in my life, and every time I achieved the goal, I got disappointed and I got depressed, and then it changed me. It changed me so that I when you had the thing that you wanted that you couldn't have, when you finally get it, then you start to realize that your value system is messed up, and that what the problem was that you were valuing the wrong things. But you can't get there unless you've been there, right? I can tell people about it all day long, it doesn't matter. But once you get those things that you thought were out of your league that you couldn't get, then it shifts your system. And really, you know, my advice for women is look for guys that have already gone through that shift.
So earlier when we were talking, you mentioned that you believe attraction is not a choice, that it just happens naturally. So, and now you're saying that, you know, there's a chance that a guy would choose a girl that is not as attractive to him, but that gives him more fulfillment. So can you describe that girl? Can you describe that 8 that would give him more fulfillment?
Yeah. So this is part of the reason why, even though I tell guys how to have sex on the first date, I would tell women to not do it, which is because that gives them a chance to actually see your value beyond just the physical beauty. Because, you know, and so that not 10, that 8, let's say, she's, first of all, she has enough self-respect that she didn't just give it up right away. She made it a little bit harder for him, right? He says, whoa, this is interesting. I have all these girls throwing themselves at me, and why is this girl not throwing herself at me? That's weird, right? Like, I got to find out more. Why there must be something. She must be special in some way that like, doesn't she not know who I am? Did she not see my Instagram? Like, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of the viewpoint. And then it's like, okay, but there is something more to her because she has self-control. She respects herself. She knows that she has more to offer than just her looks. So she doesn't completely just concentrate on her looks, right? She is feminine. She's not afraid to show a little bit of a softer side, but only to a man who's worthy of it. So she previews it. She says, I could be like this. You could have me. I could, put my hand on your back and make you feel like a strong man. And I could be an aid to your life and treat you sweetly and nurture you. Right. But you have to earn it. Right. So I think that's that person. And then also she has a personality. She's fun to be with. She is someone who you actually would want to do things with and spend time with, not just time in the bedroom. So, I think it's all those things. And like I said, as much as I tell guys that the opposite strategy for women that are looking to attract a high value man and to be that, they have to really focus on waiting, holding the guy off a little bit so that he can actually, have something to conquer. Right. It's not just, not just easily on the first date. Again, it's weird for me to be on this side talking about the opposite, but looking at both, I mean, I'm just going to be honest, like that's how I see it. So
how long do you think it should take a guy to figure out whether this is a woman of substance or not?
It could be as soon as 1 or 2 dates, honestly. So, I don't think it should take a very long time, right? Because it should be pretty apparent, right? I think that there's, again, we talked about attraction not being a choice. These are attractive elements that are going to create a very strong chemistry, an intimacy beyond just a physical attraction, right? I think if you feel like there's an actual intimacy there, something deeper that you can't explain, then that's how you know. Whereas physical attraction, yeah, that happens every day, but this is a more rare thing.
So then flip that around to the other side. Let's say a female advances on a male and he says no. Do you think in a way that could be offensive? And if so, how do you know when to navigate those waters? Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, women should not be making a sexual advance towards a man.
Why?
Because it's not very feminine. That's the man's role. And it puts you in that awkward position, right? Because women can't handle rejection. Men are bred to handle rejection. A man has to be able to handle rejection in life. In general, it's going to be much more difficult, right? Why put yourself in that position? In fact, that's why most women don't approach guys, and most women, are very careful in putting guys into the friend zone and not outright rejecting them, because they empathize with what it would feel like. And so they don't want to hurt feelings. So they put guys into the friend zone and instead of just outright rejecting them, because they wouldn't want to be outright rejected. So I would say that you avoid that problem by not making a sexual. Now, again, don't get me wrong, right? Like if a guy makes an event, if he puts his hand on your leg and you grab his hand and squeeze it to indicate that you like that, that's totally fine. That's not the same thing. But if you're like being super aggressive and making the first move or doing something that, for a guy, for a lot of guys, they're gonna be fine with it. But for a guy that has his own self-worth and value as a man, it's going to be a turnoff. He's going to be like, I don't know. I don't like that. I want to be the leader. I want to be the one who's taking charge of this. I don't want a woman that's acting like a man, right? We talked about strippers and the idea of like, blatant sexuality being masculine. Is a masculine, a man doesn't, a real man doesn't want to sleep with a man.
Right. So then going back to the leadership role, let's say on the first date, is it the male's responsibility to pose questions that will accentuate the girl's femininity, or is it her job to put her feminine foot forward and say, here's all the nurturing features you would like about me?
I would say that if he's acting like a man, if he's masculine, that he will bring it out, just like we talked about with the magnets, that she won't be able to help but giggle and laugh around him and blush, because because of his presence, right? What's very important for a man is his presence, you know, and a lot of women, they judge a man based on, they see a man and they want to see how do they feel around him. And it's something that's why women like men of high stature, right? Of that they have a large physical presence already. Now it doesn't mean that you have to be tall or anything, you know, but it already carries somewhat of that presence. It feels like you're around a man. And so that feeling will cause a woman that's even trying to be masculine, she won't be able to help. She'll have to giggle, she'll have to blush or smile, and she won't be able to help it. So I think it'll bring it out automatically. I think trying to bring it out as a woman, the way that you try to bring it out as a woman on a date is that you do something feminine, like wear a dress on the date, a nice dress, right? Make yourself look pretty, wear a dress, like, you know, dress in a somewhat modest but feminine way. And then that's also going to bring that out in the man, because he's going to see that, he's going to say, wow, this woman's different. She, you know, she purposely wore this dress, made herself look nice to me, made herself look feminine. You know, she's making herself look cute, not like skanky sexy, but cute, like feminine. I think that's how you can initiate that, where the guy is more likely to but really it comes down to that presence. A strong masculine presence will cause a woman to become more feminine.
Well, okay, so let's say that I go on a date with somebody and I'm obviously, as we've already established, a very dominant personality, masculine personality. What are conversations that a guy could bring up? What are things that he could make me talk about or talk about with me, to help me break down walls or to help me loosen up a little bit?
Yeah. So what will happen is this is, you know, you'll be trying to impress him by telling him about all these things you've done, accomplishments, and he will just not be taken in by it, not be impressed, and say, you don't have to impress me. Or he'll interrupt you and he'll say, you know, you have the most beautiful eyes. I just can't stop staring at. I'm not paying attention to a word you're saying right now because I just can't stop. So he's going to do things that are going to shake you out of that bristly, or you know, I mean, let me show you how equal I am to you and how I can do all the things you can do. He's not going to be fazed by those things. He's not going to be threatened by them, but he's not going to be fazed by them. And he's just going to continue forward anyway and bring you out those things. Every time you say something that is bristly, he's gonna push it aside and say, I know that you're really sweet. Something, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's gonna counter that, and that's gonna let you finally to feel relief that, okay, I don't have to be on my show. It's not a show. I can just relax and let this guy treat me like a princess. Like, you know, I can be feminine around him. I think that's the way it has to play forward.
So going off that, let's navigate the waters of competition between females. So let's, you know, it's a very known fact that any girl will want to know everything about your ex. She'll want to know everything about who you've dated, how hot they were, what do they do now? Are they more successful than me? Am I better than them? Will, you know, he want to go back to them? And I think that a lot of that just stems from females being insecure in general. But how, in a sense, can a guy make a female feel secure to where she doesn't feel like she needs to constantly compete with the females around her or the females of his past?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, don't answer any of those questions. I was just talking to someone today, actually, one of my coaching clients that's female, and she was negotiating a job. And she's like, well, what do I do when they ask me what my salary requirements are? I said, don't answer the question. And she's like, well, I can't just not answer the question. I'm like, I do it all the time. You ask me a question I don't like, I just pass. I just don't say it or answer a different question. I said, did you watch the political debates? Watch that. Like, do they get asked a lot of direct questions? Do those guys answer any of those direct questions? No, they just side skirt all those questions. So first of all, as a guy, just don't answer those questions, because there's no good answers to the question. Or if you're going to make up an answer, just make up a silly answer. Oh, I dated 1,000 girls. You're like 1,001, and they're all supermodels, right? Like, whatever, because nothing good can come from answering that question, right? You're not going to, if a guy answers that question and says, oh yeah, all my girlfriends, they look like dog shit, they're fat, 300 pounds, you're like the best one, I can't believe that you're on a date with me. you don't want a guy that's like that you're the best he's ever had in his life. That's not good. And if he says, oh yeah, this one girl, like, and you look at their Instagrams and they're like, they're like supermodel status, like just, 1 million followers on Instagram, you're also not going to like that. That's not going to make you feel very good either. So the best, like a guy that's a gentleman will understand to not answer that question for your benefit, because he could brag about it. He could use that as an opportunity to say, look how great I am. But it's better to shield you from that so that you don't either way, because it's not going to be good. So that's what I would say about that.
Interesting. I wonder if, in a sense, that underlying competition between females is sometimes what kills relationships. I'm sure it is. Always trying to be what you think the guy wants, or what I hate when girls say is, oh, he has a type, and trying to fit into that type, whatever it is, knowing good and well it didn't work out all the other times before you. So
I think, again, like another aspect of like answering that question is what I tell women all the time is that treat the man you're like you're with like a king. Treat him like a king. You want him to act like a king, treat him like a king. And in response, he'll treat you like a princess. And that's how you want to be treated. Not like a queen, like a princess. That's really how women want to be treated. That's the fairy tale. That's what the Disney movies, that's what it's not a queen. The queen is not the main character in the movie. It's the princess, right? I mean, now it's flipped and it's whatever. But if you look back in time, why? Because women want to be treated like a princess, and they want to marry the guy that's a king. Maybe he's a prince at first, but he becomes a king at least, and that's so critical. And so if you treat a man like a king, you don't have to worry about the competition, because I guarantee you, no woman has treated that a guy that you're with. It's very rare that a woman has actually really treated him like a king. That's had respect for him. That's made him feel like the big strong man. A lot of times when guys cheat with their secretary is not as good looking as maybe their girlfriend or their wife or whatever, but she treats him with respect and treats him like a big strong man, makes him feel masculine, and then he gets sucked right into that, because it's hard to resist as a man, because that's the thing that's beyond just the physical attraction, and that's something that's going to keep the interest of a guy, because a guy that's physically attracted to you, he's going to be physically attracted for some time, but eventually that's going to wear off. That charm can only wear off. You can't continue to compete with women on physical beauty, because you will get older and you will lose that, like no matter how hard you hold on to that. But what you can compete on them is treating the man as best as possible, treating him like a king. And other women won't be willing to do that, because they'll be stuck in their feminist ways, thinking I'm the superhero, this is my story, instead of realizing that they'll be a lot more happy being comfortable, being feminine, submitting to a man, allowing him to be the man, and feeling that feeling. So
do you think that takes a certain type of woman, though, to be able to compartmentalize that comparison?
Which comparison?
Between her and other females, or the competition that every girl thinks is there, it's actually not. The guy has no idea that she's competing with all the girls around her, or his mom, stealing attention from his mom, or whatever it may be. Do you think that it takes a special kind of person or a certain kind of female to be able to step back and let that go? Or do you think that that is something that all females are capable of?
Unfortunately, the way that it works in a lot of the dynamics of relationships is that the woman is the receptive one. She doesn't have a lot of control over the situation, right? You can present yourself as feminine as possible, make yourself look pretty, treat a man like a king. Like those are things that you can do. Give him respect, and and those things, and to learn to be feminine. But to some degree, the real solution to this problem is that you need to find a guy that treats you like you're the only woman in the world, and there's no other women around when he sees you, and there's never been any, and there'll never be any. And he's got to do that. He's got to make you feel like you're completely special, and he has no eyes for anyone else, and no one could compare. And if he doesn't do that, you can't make that happen. And so the best way to do that is to be that kind of feminine woman that he's never seen before, and that hopefully will bring that out in him, right? But to some degree, you're in the passive position, right? Unfortunately, that's it. Like so many women are trying to be in the active position, but it's just the way that things work. And you don't want to be in the active position because you don't want a guy that you have to tell him what to do. He should know. And
Right.
so, you know, it's a tough situation. I empathize with it because there's not a lot that I could give guys. You know, it's so much easier for me to coach guys than it is for me to coach girls because I give them all these things. I can be like, okay, you need to act like this, go in there like that, go talk to that girl, stop being a pussy. You know, I can tell them all these things, and I'd be like, okay, when you're in a conversation, you know, you do this and you act this way, and you know, and I can give them all these things because they're in the active role. But when it comes to coaching women, I can only kind of talk about how the dynamics work, but I can't really, and I can tell you, okay, you know, wear a dress, be feminine, right? You know, allow yourself to be feminine, you know, don't give it out on the first date. Like I can give that kind of, but I can't really give you actionable pieces because you have to be on the passive. You have to be receiving. You can be open to reception. That's the best thing that I can give you. But unfortunately, you know, the guy has to step up. He has to be the man, and you want him to be the man, because if you had to do something, if you had to make it happen, it wouldn't be that magical experience that you're looking for.
Do you think most men know how to step up and be the dominant figure, or do you think that it's just kind of accepted for them to be subpar?
It's accepted. It's, in fact, it's pushed. It's the whole idea of toxic masculinity is destroying what men used to be. In fact, that's why my whole company with Bulldog Mindset, my whole mission in life is to teach men how to become strong men, how to get rid of the victim mindset, how to step up, be dominant men, to embrace their masculinity, to become men. My talk that I did for the men was how to be a man. And I started off by saying, I think it's funny, a lot of people make fun of me on the channel. They say, oh, you're going to teach me how to be a man, as if I need to learn how to be a man. And I'm like, damn right you do, because you don't know how to be a man. And I will teach you how to do it, because there's no one teaching you how to do this. And it's important. Guys need to learn this, because they're not disappointing themselves and not getting what they want out of life. It's not just them, but they're disappointing women, because women want real men and there's not enough of them. And it's not something that women can teach men. Men have to teach men, and they have to step up. And so it's a bad situation that we're in right now. Nobody's happy, right, because of that. But yeah, men have to learn it, and they have to step up. You know, women are born, men are made. Men have to become men, right? You can be an adult, you could be a 30-year-old boy, okay, and you haven't become a man yet. And so that's why it's so important that men have to step up and learn these things.
So are you saying that men naturally, you know, before they become a man, have more feminine tendencies? They're more, you know, they put out more vibes of nurturing and more, I don't know, more feminine vibes. Is that what you're kind of saying? They're able to connect more so on intimacy between, you know, a relationship, instead of being a provider and being the manly man.
I would say I always say there's three sexes, right? There's man, woman, and boy. And that's how, and actually growing up, right, boys are more soft than little girls, right? You know, you watch kids on the playground, the little boy, like 5 or 6 years old, he gets hit, he's crying, he's bailing his eyes out. The girl falls from the side and she just like dusts herself off, and she's okay. She's actually more of a man than the boy, because boys are soft, right? And a lot of times they grow up and they become adults and they're still just as soft. They're wearing their heart on their sleeve. They can't control their emotions. A lot of what we see today, the trouble and the violence that we're seeing today in society, in America, is a bunch of soft boys that are making all the trouble, because they can't handle their emotions, because they're super emotional, right? They haven't grown up. They haven't become tough. They haven't become men. So it's a little bit different. I wouldn't say that they're definitely feminine, but they're almost worse than feminine, right? Because at least a woman that's feminine, she's at least being taught by society to be a little bit more masculine. So she's a little tougher than the boys. But these boys that are being told masculinity is bad, they're never becoming men. They're actually more feminine. They're worse than women as far as being feminine. They're so far from it, and in a different way, not in a good way, right? Because femininity in a woman is a good thing. Femininity in a man or a boy is not a good thing. You know, no one likes to see weakness in men, right? Men don't appreciate weak men. Women despise weak men.
So do you think that as relationships progress, though, that a woman would want to see more of that weakness as they become, more intimate and they become more romantically involved? I think, breaking down those walls goes for both men and women. A woman doesn't want to talk to a manly man that is a brick wall 24/7. She wants to know, every girl remembers the first time she saw a man cry, and every girl remembers the first time she saw the guy she's dating or married to cry. And it was one of those moments where, it kind of throws girls off. It throws, what do you need from me, and how can I be there for you, and how was I not there for you this whole time? So that, I want you to be able to feel nurtured and taken care of and loved. And I think that there is a sense in women that, like, we need to take care of a man emotionally too. And so I kind of want to counter what you said and say that, yes, a man needs to be hard, he needs to be, a manly man, like you were saying, but also that's that touch of just being gentle and being soft and needing to be cared for that a boy has, I feel like is something that a woman also needs.
So here's what I say about this. So a couple things. So first, a man should never cry in front of a woman. But what you're talking about, I would not describe as weakness, but I'd call it openness and possibly vulnerability. Mm-hmm. Vulnerability is strength. I'll tell you why. Have you ever seen Braveheart?
I have not.
Okay, there's this scene in Braveheart where the guys are like all lined up there, have their faces painted blue, and they're yelling, they're getting ready to go to war, right? And the guys, the main army, Mel Gibson side, they turn and face the enemy, and they lift up their skirts and show their asses to the opposing force. That's being vulnerable. Showing your butt, your uncovered butt, is vulnerable. Now, how can you be vulnerable? It's because you're strong. Because they're basically saying, look, we're so strong that we're willing to expose our weakness to you because we don't see it as a weakness.
Right.
So vulnerability is strength in that aspect. But here's the thing. I always tell guys this. I say, look, guys have it backwards, right? A lot of guys are looking for a woman to cry on her shoulder, to get that emotional support, and they tell women all their problems and they dump on them just like a woman. They act like a woman. They feel like they want a girl that's going to be there. It's going to give them a pat on the back, that they can cry on her shoulder while she cries on their shoulder, and she's going to support him and love him and take care of him and make him feel better about himself and take care of his boo-boos. Okay. And she will do that, but she will also lose sexual attraction for him when that happens, because he's supposed to be the big strong man. So they do that, and then they act macho and tough in front of their male friends. And what I tell guys is the opposite. I say, look. The woman that's in your life, you need to be strong for her. You need to be the rock. You need to be strong for the world. You got a close group of guy friends. That's where you actually allow your weakness to be seen, because they understand, because they're going to support you. That's where you let down. You're crumbling. If you're going to cry anywhere, if you're going to crumble on the floor there. Okay. And then get lifted by those men, a brotherhood. All men should be part of a brotherhood, should have that, so that you can come and fight and be the ones who keep the borders, who can present the strong front, who can be strong for the women, for the children, for society, who needs you as strong men, who needs to see you as a invulnerable superhero who has no weakness, so that they can have faith, so they can have hope when it seems like there's no hope. It's a hard thing to hold up. But it is your calling as a man. You don't get to put the gloves down. You have to keep the gloves up. There's no, you don't get a period to rest. Like, only that respite that you have is that tight group of of men that you trust, that are your fellow soldiers, that are your warriors, and that that's where you have that. Now, in relation to a woman, you shouldn't be a wall, right? That's a vulnerability. That's where it's like it's more of being authentic and being genuine, and not dumping your shit on her, but saying, look, I can be open with you. I can be open, not weak, but open. I don't need to cry on your shoulder, but I will express what I'm feeling about you what I'm feeling about this situation, right? You know, who I am as a man, so you can know who I am, you know, deep down inside. But I don't need to share my weaknesses and my fears and those things with you. That I share with the men. To the woman, I present the strong front. I'm still open, right? I'm still caring. I'm still, you know, intimate, right? That intimacy, but not weak. Because even though a lot of women, you think you want that from men, you think, oh, it'd be nice if he just opened up and cried with me, and we could just cry together and eat ice cream, you know, Ben and Jerry's or whatever. No, you think you want it, but you won't, because you won't respect the guy. And he'll become a friend. He'll become a good girlfriend, and you'll be like, oh, it's so great that we can, you know, eat Ben and Jerry's together and cry about shit. But you will lose sexual attraction from it, and you'll destroy the relationship. So you think you want it, but you don't really want it.
So I'm not necessarily talking about like crying all the time. Let's
Right.
just say, like for example, the first time I saw my dad cry is whenever his mom died, my grandma died, and that kind of, you know, set the foundation for me, the idea for me that he felt okay not protecting his pride in our house. He felt comfortable enough with my mom and comfortable enough with our family to be able to let his emotions take over for a few seconds. But then
That's different. Yeah.
but then he pulled it back together and, you know, went about his way. And as far as, you know, my boyfriend goes, whenever I was in the shooting and I finally got out all that emotion with everybody, my dad, my mom, whole family included, friends and everybody, you know, there was a very vulnerable moment because we all kind of realized like, holy cow, I might not have walked out of there. And I did see him cry for a little bit. And for me, at least, that level of letting your wall down showed that like, it kind of solidified the fact that, oh my gosh, he cares for me. But also it showed that, you know, he was I knew in that moment that he cared for me, but that if anything should happen to me, he's willing to go to arms for me. He's willing to protect me at all costs. And I don't think that, you know, showing vulnerability every now and then like that is necessarily a bad thing. I think it shows that a guy is willing to do what it takes to protect somebody that he sees as special and as fragile in a sense.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, I mean, there's a difference between being vulnerable and showing vulnerability, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that showing vulnerability, that's fine. That comes from a position of strength, right? You're like, when you described the situation with your dad, he was able to do that because he knew who he was as a man, and he didn't dwell in it, right? He probably, you know, couldn't hold it back. You know what I mean? It's like, that's an intense thing. And then, but then he regained that strong front, right? It's like, you can see that humanity in him, and that's powerful. But if he were weeping for a week, you would lose, you know what I'm saying, you would lose respect.
Yeah,
right?
and
So
that's kind of where that whole toxic masculinity thing comes in, is that a lot of guys feel like even when something like that is overwhelming, they have to remove themselves from the situation with their significant other, as opposed to just like letting it out and moving on. And I think that sometimes can be more of a barrier than anything else, you know, feeling like you can't, like you're not confident enough in yourself, or you have too much pride in the relationship and being the man of the relationship, to where you can't just, you know, rely on, you know, your female counterpart to, you know, help heal you in a sense.
I think that it comes more from an intuition, like, you know, so you know, you know a man, you know your man, and you look at him and you know that inside he's struggling, and he doesn't have to say anything. He doesn't have to go and cry on your shoulder. He doesn't have to go and seek you out and say, make me feel better, kiss my boo-boos. But you do it anyway because you know, and he lets you, as opposed to him initiate. You see what I'm saying? So that's where I would say is that, you know, is what is healthy, what actually works. Because if he's going out there to cry on your shoulder, telling you about all of his problems, like, you know, and you can see it in his eyes, and he's letting you have a glimpse of it, but he's still remaining stoic in the sense that he's still on his mission. He's not going to let it stop him. He's not going to let that carry him away. He's not going to not go to work because he's upset. You know what I'm saying? But you, as a woman who's nurturing, who's feminine, sees that and gives him the support that he needs without him having to ask for it, without him having to be weak, because you're giving him the strength when he needs that strength. And that strength is something that can make a man, slay 1,000 dragons when he has that woman behind him that makes him stronger, when he has that weakness, because she can see that in him, that vulnerability. So that's how I look at it.